It is a Quran.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تبوأوا الدار والإيم يحبون من هاهم ولا يجدون فيهم في صدورهم حاجة أوتوا ويؤثرون أنفسهم ولو كان بهم خصاصة ومن يوق شح نفسه فأولئك هم المفلحون ومن صدق الله. In the name of Allah, Almighty God, the gracious, always merciful. And those who before them had homes have no jealousy in their hearts for that which they have been given, and give the immigrants preference, and whosoever is saved from his grief, such are they who will be.
Children are future of every nation. I shall now invite Afghan and Pakistani children to sing. Is spanned over 4 decades. To capture 4 decades in a short documentary.
The upheaval of 19 into decades of war and unrest. Afghans had 0.5 million entered Pakistan with the hope to find government established countrywide commissionerates for Afghan refugees, managed increasing challenges, trained staff with extensive outreach, a feat never achieved before. The international community and UNHCR vowed to assist Pakistan in providing food, water, electricity. Government created dedicated structures and provided exclusive security, delivered free accessible education for all. Millions of Afghan children were in school again, given free basic and advanced health facilities to all. Then food assistance discontinued. More challenges arose, resulting in the movement of refugees to urban centers. With a renewed commitment, in urban centers and 54 refugee camps today, Pakistan facilitates Afghan refugees in all aspects of life, with millions registered and documented. Iris scans and biometric identity provided dignity and safety through inclusive policies and management, provides free primary education, easy access to higher and professional education, thousands of scholarships for higher studies, grants financial freedom, access to the private sector, trainings, skills, and livelihoods, encourages businesses and trades, a flexible visa regime and guidance centers, support programs for social cohesion. 40 years on, Pakistan still keeps its vow. Cultural and social activities flourish, hopes and dreams, enabling the return home with free and informed choice. It's time for global peace and prosperity, to share this responsibility together and fulfill our promise to humanity.
Secretary General, UN High Commissioner for Refugees, and cabinet colleagues, Excellencies, Ambassadors, this morning. I am honored and privileged to welcome all the participants of these events. Excellencies, as you know, UNHCR, rural countries and other stakeholders since 40 enhance solidarity to more vigorous and predictable partnerships for the protected refugees, to galvanize support for the creation of conditions that is the responsibility sharing with both countries. Strategy for Afghan refugee support platform. Ladies and gentlemen, apart from the ongoing high-level segment, will cover 2 ministerial roundtable meetings. Distinguished delegates, I would like to conclude by assuring the government of Pakistan's continued commitment to durable solution of the Afghan refugee situation under our SSAR approach that strives for dignified repatriation, sustainable reintegration in their home country, and assistance to the hosting communities. I thank you all for your presence and request for your active participation.
Now I will request the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the host communities.
Prime Minister, Mr. Vice President, Secretary General, ministers, and ladies and gentlemen, we have heard the people of Pakistan have stood through the early days of upheaval and displacement, when a third of the country's population fled across its borders in just a few years. Through moments of hope, when millions returned, seeking stability and the future back home. As the UNHCR representative in Afghanistan almost 20 years ago, I was personally privileged to be part of a collective, extraordinary effort to support 3 million Afghans return home after years of exile. It was a historic repatriation, and allow me to add the highlight of my professional experience. But Pakistan, and of course also Iran, have been with Afghan refugees through bitter times of hardship and loss, renewed conflict and uncertainty, and through years of efforts to rebuild a fractured nation and secure the peaceful future that the people of Afghanistan deserve. This is what we're here to mark today: the compassion, the hospitality, the solidarity of the people of the host countries, and the courage and resilience of the Afghan people. For Afghans, as you know, the story of their exile has been long and painful, marked by moments of hope and despair. A story that will not be complete until solutions can be found back in their own country. From the refugee perspective, that path remains uncertain. Inside Afghanistan, fighting continues to kill and maim civilians, shut down schools and clinics, and limit economic activity. More than 400,000 people were displaced within the country last year alone by conflict, drought, and other natural hazards. And just 8,000 refugees were able to return home through the voluntary repatriation program. For some refugees, nonetheless, solutions can be possible, even in these difficult circumstances. And I commend the commitment of the government of Afghanistan to the return and reintegration of its nationals and to addressing internal displacement. Improved institutional arrangements have been put in place to drive these efforts. And national Afghan peace and development programs now include land allocation schemes and targeted reintegration support. This is valuable work that must be continued and supported in order to create conditions for larger and sustainable returns. I also welcome the constructive dialogue between the governments of Afghanistan, Iran, and Pakistan in the framework of the Solutions Strategy for Afghan Refugees, launched together with UNHCR in 2012, when the Secretary General was the High Commissioner for Refugees. Working on solutions is all the more important as efforts to revitalize the peace process in Afghanistan continue and hopefully gain momentum. Afghan displacement can only be solved by peace, and peace will be strengthened by solving forced displacement. Over the years, the governments and people of the host countries have not only welcomed Afghans, but have to a large extent absorbed them into the fabric of their societies, as we have seen from the video, always looking ahead to the day when the refugees will be able to return, but recognizing that in the meantime, they deserve the chance to establish a home, to move freely, educate their children, build productive and dignified lives. Even today, Pakistan and Iran together continue to host 90% of registered Afghan refugees globally, some 2.4 million people. In addition, temporary labor migration and other forms of cross-border movement in the sub-region mean that both countries also host large non-refugee Afghan populations. In recent years, there have been commendable efforts towards identification and documentation of these populations and enhancing access to passports and work permits. I encourage these efforts to continue and to be accelerated. The Islamic Republic of Pakistan, which was for 22 years the world's largest refugee hosting country, has been a long-standing global leader in the field of refugee protection. Last December, I was honored to welcome the Honorable Prime Minister as a co-convener of the first ever Global Refugee Forum in Geneva. This generosity has been reflected in inclusive policies to enable access by Afghan refugees to public education and healthcare, efforts accompanied by pioneering work in the field of biometric registration, and multi-year investments in building social cohesion through the Refugee Affected and Hosting Area Initiative. The government's recent decision to allow Afghan refugees to open bank accounts will help pave the way to greater economic inclusion. And we should not forget that the Islamic Republic of Iran has also been a global example. Progressive education policies have driven up literacy rates and transformed the prospect of generations of Afghan refugees. Refugees in Iran can access free primary health care and the National Health Insurance Scheme. Work rights have been progressively expanded over the years, and most of these commendable initiatives are funded from Iran's own resources, despite escalating economic pressures impacting both the refugees and their hosts. Ladies and gentlemen, the history of Pakistan's solidarity with Afghan refugees, which we honor today, shows that generosity has not come without cost. Hosting millions of refugees presents enormous challenges. It has an impact on local economies, on infrastructure, on services, on security, on the environment. Hosting refugees is a responsibility exercised on behalf of the international community, a responsibility that we must recognize has not been equitably shared. And the substantial number of young and mobile Afghans do indeed embark increasingly on dangerous journeys beyond the sub-region, principally towards Europe and the Gulf countries. But the vast majority of refugees remain in the two neighboring countries, and there, international support, while welcome, remains woefully insufficient. The Global Compact on Refugees was shaped by the need for more equitable burden sharing, including in large, protracted refugee situations. Now is the time to make that commitment real, here. And to this end, at the Global Refugee Forum in December, we activated a dedicated support platform for the solution strategy for Afghan refugees. I appeal to donors in particular to join the platform and lend strong support, including through the mobilization of development partners and resources. The past 40 years have equipped us with a wealth of experience and important lessons. It is now up to us to use them wisely. Giving up is not an option. My greatest hope is that this conference, for which I thank the Honorable Prime Minister and the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, will call attention to the human consequences of this protracted crisis and galvanize progress towards a resolution. Meanwhile, we cannot abandon Afghan refugees and Afghans inside the country to another year, let alone to another decade of carving out a precarious existence while waiting for peace to come. Thank you.
Pakistan, Makhdoom Shah Mahmood Qureshi to please come and share his thoughts.
Rahim, Honorable Prime Minister, Secretary General, Vice President of Afghanistan, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. I welcome you all to your presence today to mark the 40 years of Afghan refugees in Pakistan is a testament and their hosting communities. I commend the Secretary General. Over the last 4 decades, nearly 3 generations of Afghan refugees sought shelter in Pakistan, fleeing from violence and war in their homeland. At its peak, Pakistan hosted 5 million refugees. Even today, we continue to host 3 million registered and unregistered Afghan refugees, which remains second largest protracted refugee crisis in the world. Pakistan's cooperation to deal with this crisis is guided by the basic principles of Islamic values to provide shelter and hospitality to the refugee on compassionate grounds. The Pak-Afghan relationship, which is also anchored in shared history, common faith, and cultural affinity, has provided an impetus to host millions of Afghan refugees in my country. Excellencies, the first global refugee forum, where Prime Minister Imran Khan, along with the UN Secretary General, gathered in Geneva in December 2019, resulted in a large number of commitments and pledges for refugees. A significant step was taken to launch support platform for solutions strategy for Afghan refugees. The support platform was jointly launched by Pakistan, Iran, Afghanistan, and the UNHCR. Among other things, the support platform aims to promote and support refugee return, provides assistance to host countries and communities, and enhance capacity for sustainable reintegration in Afghanistan. Excellencies, every Afghan refugee is hoping that this conference would seize the opportunity provided by a rare confluence of forces where expectations for peace in Afghanistan have not only arisen, but are also rising every day. They are looking at this conference with great hopes and expectations. They are aiming for increased enrollment places in schools, colleges, and universities. They're also expecting that together you will give an unprecedented support to the peace process. Afghan refugees are now expecting that with hope for peace, you will help them rebuild their country. They want to know if you will equip them with the required skills and resources. Their aspirations are genuine and must be met with equal opportunities. Today, I'm asking you to join hands with Pakistan to provide for their basic needs and enable them to live a dignified life. Excellencies, no state can handle the magnitude of this crisis alone. International cooperation is required more than ever before. It is imperative that you revalidate the principles of sharing responsibility and burden. For Pakistan, the caring of refugees is shaped by the human values of our people, the values of generosity, compassion, and hospitality. Despite constraints, Pakistan has provided protection, offered opportunities for education, health, livelihoods, and social mobility to millions of Afghan refugees. As much as Pakistan can, we have provided vocational training and skilled-based programs as part of efforts to help build human capital for a prosperous Afghan nation. We're also taking measures such as allowing opening of bank accounts to facilitate their participation in our formal economy so that they live a life of self-reliance. We have registered nearly 1 million undocumented and virtually stateless Afghans in Pakistan. This identity entitles them to return to Afghanistan, obtain legal travel documents, benefit from generous visa policy of Pakistan, and contribute to the development of their country of origin as well as destination. We're also pursuing a policy of return of Afghan refugees with dignity, safety, and honor. Excellencies, Pakistan prefers adoption of a strategic approach, one that prevents the conflicts from eruption and one that seeks to resolve long-standing disputes. Peace and stability in Afghanistan is indispensable. Pakistan would continue to facilitate the Afghan-led, Afghan-owned peace and reconciliation process. Excellencies, today I would like to avail this opportunity to place before you 7-point agenda to convert the support platform for solution strategy for Afghan refugees into an implementation action plan. This is all the major important when peace and reconciliation efforts are making headways. 1. Extend support to Afghan peace process as an enabler of settling Afghan refugees and to help ease the global refugee burden. 2. Renew your commitments and pledges to bring the gap between the requirements of Afghan refugees and host communities created due to insufficient resources for their protection and well-being. 3. Reinforce existing partnerships, forge new ones, and encourage additional states, international organizations, and other stakeholders to come forward to fulfill this collective responsibility toward Afghan refugees and host communities. 4. Extend and enhance resettlement opportunities for Afghan refugees in third countries. 5. Establish complementary pathways for Afghan refugees in the form of additional scholarships, employable skills, trainings, and jobs opportunities by supporting services infrastructure of the host communities. 6. Enhance assistance for living conditions in high return areas in Afghanistan. 7. Create an international fund to help return of the Afghan refugees and to de-risk the private sector for investing and building human capital for Afghan refugees and creating economic opportunities for them in host communities. Excellency, finally, I take this opportunity to reaffirm that the government and people of Pakistan will continue to support their Afghan brothers and sisters who have chosen to stay in our country as a place of safety and refuge. We will also work with the international community on developing a gradual, time-bound, and well-resourced and mutually agreed roadmap on refugee return. This should be a vital component of peace deal for stability and sustainable prosperity in Afghanistan. I thank you.
برادر گرامی جلالت مآب عمران خان صدر اعظم جمهوری اسلامی پاکستان، جناب آقای گرندی کمیشنر عالی ملل متحد در امور پناهندگان، رئیس ایالات متحده آمریکا، وزرا، سفرا و نمایندگان محترم دولت‌های 40 سالگی میزبانی پاکستان از مهاجرین افغان این کنفرانس مهم را دایر کردند و همچنین از نمایندگان همه کشورها و سازمان‌های بین‌المللی از مقامات سازمان ملل متحد، مخصوصاً جناب آقای گوترش، تشکر میکنم که هم در برگزاری این کنفرانس همکاری کردند و اشتراک کردند و همواره در طول این 40 سال از حامیان مهاجرین افغان بودند. حضار گرامی، متن کامل سخنرانی به انگلیسی به خدمت شما توضیح شده. ما خلاصه او را در چند نقطه خدمت شما ارائه میکنم. در این رابطه 3 موضوع مرتبط به هم درباره دیدگاه‌های دولت افغانستان را خدمت شما مطرح میکنم. اول موضوع مهاجرین. ما در تاریخ و فرهنگ دینی خود 2 تجربه بسیار ارزشمند از مهاجرت در صدر اسلام را داریم. یکی مهاجرت و پناه آوردن جمعی از مسلمانان به حبشه و دیگری به مدینه. این مهاجرت ها روابط دوستی و برادری بین ملت ها و اقوام مخصوصاً بین مسلمانان و مردم حبشه را مستحکم ساخت و در مدینه باعث برقراری صلح بین باشندگان آن گردید و مهمتر از همه این که در مدینه به دولت سازی و ملت سازی و ایجاد ثبات سیاسی و اجتماعی منجر شد. مهاجرت مردم افغانستان در دوره جهاد ضد شوروی سابق نمونه از همین مهاجرت ها بود. در دهه 1980 بیش از 60 میلیون افغان به پاکستان و ایران مهاجر شدند. ما از پاکستان و ایران از بابت این که در آن سالهای جنگ و جهاد به مردم ما پناه دادند و پناهگاه برای همیشه سپاسگزار هستیم. در آن سالها پاکستان برای ما واقعا یک پناهگاه بود. پناهگاه به معنای واقعی کلمه که رشته‌های دوستی و برادری بین 2 ملت را نیز برای همیشه محکم و استوار ساخت. بدون شک حضور انبوهی از مهاجرین ما در کشورهای همسایه مشکلاتی هم برای میزبانها داشته است. اما میخوام تأکید کنم که در بسیاری از حالات مهاجرین ما در اقتصاد این کشورها نقش مثبت داشتند. مهاجرین ما معمولاً بار دوش میزبانهای خود نبودند، بلکه با حفظ عزت و غرور خود کار کردند و از آبله دست خود نان خوردند و حتی با به عهده گرفتن کارهای شاقه و طاقت فرسا در کشورها سهم بزرگی در آبادانی کشورهای میزبان داشتند. اما از سال 2001 به بعد که در افغانستان یک نظام مبتنی بر قانون اساسی و انتخابات حاکم شد و پاکستان هم این دولت و مشروعیت آن را به رسمیت شناخت، متاسفانه گروه‌هایی از مخالفین دولت افغانستان در پاکستان از میان مهاجرین به سربازگیری دست زدند و در حقیقت از کمپ‌های مهاجرین برای خود پناهگاه و آموزشگاه ساختند و در همین کمپ‌ها علیه دولت مشروع افغانستان دست به تبلیغات زدند و حتی جنگ‌های تخریبی و تروریستی را بر ضد دولت مشروع افغانستان آغاز کردند. این وضعیت باعث شد که خشونت‌ها و بی‌ثباتی‌ها و ناامنی‌ها در افغانستان همچنان تاکنون تداوم پیدا کند. جناب مآبان گرامی، در رابطه با عودت مهاجرین چند نکته کوتاه را یادآوری می‌کنم. 1. در طول 5 سال اخیر برخلاف تصور جامعه بین‌المللی، عودت مهاجرین به عنوان یک موج دوامدار از پاکستان و ایران به صورت پیوسته جریان داشته است. از سال 2002 تا 2019 میلیون‌ها مهاجر از کشورهای مختلف مخصوصاً پاکستان و ایران به افغانستان بازگشتند. ما همیشه از عودت مهاجرین استقبال کرده ایم و همچنان استقبال میکنیم. دو، اما واضح است که موضوع مهاجرین افغان در پاکستان یا ایران و یا هر جای دیگر نباید به یک مسئله سیاسی و به یک عامل فشار بر حکومت افغانستان تبدیل شود و مهاجرین ما نباید به خاطر مسائل سیاسی مورد بی‌مهری و فشارهای بیجا قرار گیرند و حقوق بشری آنان تلف شود. ما بر این باوریم که باید با کمک و مشوره همدیگر و با نظارت سازمان ملل متحد برنامه و مکانیزم مشترکی را تنظیم کنیم که عودت به عنوان یک پروسه عادی و منظم و با آگاهی و آمادگی و همکاری دو طرف تطبیق شود. 3. در مکانیزم عودت باید در پرتو معاهدات و اسناد بین‌المللی اولا عودت باید داوطلبانه باشد و نه اجباری و به صورت اخراج گروپی و ثانیاً باید تدریجی بوده و تقسیم اوقات منظم داشته باشد و سوم در میان مهاجرین ما یک گروه بزرگی از افرادی هستند که صاحب دانش، تخصص و سرمایه هستند. باید با آنان اجازه داده شود که به صورت قانونی دانش و سرمایه و کسب و کار خود را به افغانستان انتقال دهند. 4. نکته مهم این است که جامعه بین‌المللی باید یک نقش روشن و شفاف و مؤثر را به عهده بگیرد. ما در عودت مهاجرین از کمک‌های نقدی و جنسی به مهاجرین استقبال می‌کنیم، ولی این بسنده و مفید نیست. باید همکاری و کمک جامعه بین‌المللی رشد محور باشد و به ایجاد شغل و اقتصاد پایدار در افغانستان کمک کند. دوم، موضوع جنگ و صلح در افغانستان. در این رابطه چند نکته کوتاه را قابل تذکر می‌دانم. 1. از آنجا که عودت مهاجرین پیوند وثیق به مسئله صلح دارد، ما از مذاکرات بین طالبان و ایالات متحده آمریکا به منظور امضای یک موافقتنامه به تمام معنا استقبال می‌کنیم. ولی ما انتظار داریم که امضای این موافقتنامه زمینه را برای گفتگوهای مستقیم بین طالبان و دولت افغانستان فراهم گرداند. 2. دولت جمهوری اسلامی پاکستان باید در ایجاد صلح با ما شریک باشد. میخوام صادقانه بگویم ما بدون مشارکت پاکستان و سهمگیری و همکاری دولت پاکستان نمیتوانیم به صلح دست پیدا کنیم. 3. اگر طالبان پایگاه‌ها و پناهگاه‌های خود و رابطه خود با سایر گروه‌های افراطی و تروریستی را همچنان حفظ کند، هرچند آتش بس هم شود، صلح پایدار به دست نخواهد آمد. مردم ما خواستار ختم بنیادی خشونت هستند و صلح تنها یک وسیله برای ختم خشونت است. صلح واقعی آن است که همه مردم در کشور آزادانه از حقوق شهروندی خود استفاده کنند و حق شرکت در انتخابات را داشته باشند و طالبان هم مانند سایر شهروندان باید از این حقوق برخوردار شوند و در حاکمیت سیاسی افغانستان سهیم گردند. 4. صلح به معنای بازگشت به گذشته نیست. افغانستان هم در شرایط 2001 قرار ندارد. پروسه صلح و مذاکره باید در مالکیت افغانها باشد. تیم مذاکره باید با محوریت و رهبری دولت جمهوری اسلامی افغانستان به طور همه شمول و فراگیر از همه مردم افغانستان نمایندگی کند. از شرایط و مقدمات اساسی و اصلی برقراری صلح این است که کاهش خشونت‌ها به گونه‌ای باشد که همزمان با تداوم مذاکرات صلح به یک آتش بس دائمی و همه جانبه در افغانستان منجر شود. سوم، موضوع روابط دو کشور. جناب صدر اعظم عمران خان، امروز افتخار دارم که در کنار شما از روابط دوستانه دو کشور سخن میگویم. شما یک سیاستمدار مسلمان و صادق و یک فعال حقوق بشر و یک مبارز ضد فقر و فساد بوده اید و علاوه بر رهبری حکومت چندین نهاد سیاسی، علمی، صحی و ورزشی را رهبری میکنید. شما بهتر از من دردهای دو ملت و هم مشکلات دو حکومت و هم راه حل‌ها را درک میکنید و من به نمایندگی از هیئت رهبری دولت افغانستان از شما تشکر میکنم که در هر مناسبتی از افغانستان به نیکی یاد کرده و بر روابط دوستانه دو کشور تاکید کرده اید. در این رابطه چند نکته کوتاه را به عرض میرسانم. یک، ما دولت‌های افغانستان و پاکستان هیچ چاره‌ای نداریم جز این که با هم روابط دوستانه داشته باشیم. مشترکات تاریخی، فرهنگی، دینی و پیوستگی جغرافیایی و انسانی ما به حد این دو کشور را به هم پیوند داده است که هیچ کدام نمیتواند بدون همکاری با یکدیگر به موجودیت خود ادامه دهد. بدون ایجاد ثبات در افغانستان، پاکستان هرگز نمیتواند یک ثبات پایدار را در خود تضمین کند و هرگز نمیتواند به رفاه و اهداف اقتصادی خود دست پیدا کند. جناب صدر اعظم، شما از کسانی هستید که علامه اقبال را الگوی فکری خود اعلام کرده اید. ما هم فوق العاده به این فیلسوف، متفکر و شاعر پاکستانی احترام قائل هستیم. علامه اقبال عاشق افغانستان بود. از نظر علامه اقبال افغانستان قلب تپنده پیکر آسیا است. او گفته بود آسیا یک پیکر آب و گل است، ملت افغان در آن پیکر دل است. از فساد او فساد آسیا، در گشاد او گشاد آسیا. دو، بنابراین بیایید
Minister of Pakistan, Vice President of Afghanistan, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Assalamu alaikum. We come together to recognize a remarkable story of solidarity and compassion. It is important to do so for many reasons, not least because it is a story that is sorely lacking in much of our world today. For 40 years, the people of Afghanistan have faced successive crises. For 40 years, the people of Pakistan have responded with solidarity. The generosity now spans across decades and generations. And this is the world's largest protracted refugee situation in recorded history. And this is also a story that is close to my heart. In my previous life as UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Pakistan was a familiar destination. During most of my period as High Commissioner, Pakistan was the #1 refugee hosting country on earth. For more than 3 out of every 4 years since 1979, either Pakistan or Iran have ranked as the world's top refugee hosting country. And even though major conflicts have since unfortunately erupted in other parts of the world and the refugee population has soared, Pakistan today is still the world's second largest refugee hosting country. On every visit here, I've been struck by the extraordinary resilience, exceptional generosity, and overwhelming compassion. I saw solidarity not just in words, but in deeds. The generous spirit is fully in line with what I regard as the most beautiful prescription for refugee protection in world history. It is found in the Surah Al-Tawbah of the Holy Quran. And I quote, "And if anyone seeks your protection, then grant him protection, so then he can hear the words of God. Then escort him where he can be secure." End of quote. This protection should be accorded to believers and non-believers alike, in a remarkable example of tolerance many centuries before the 1951 Refugee Convention that defines, in a modern concept, refugees and the protection they deserve. And I saw that compassion play out in real time here in Pakistan. And it was grounded in vision. We have seen many innovative policies take root here: biometric registration, access to the national education system, healthcare, and inclusion in the economy. And despite Pakistan's own challenges, these initiatives have made a big difference. Indeed, many have been recognized as a global model of good practice. Some of those progressive policies have inspired elements of the Global Compact on Refugees. And we have been proud to work with you to support Pakistani host communities and Afghan refugees. We have done so through integrated humanitarian and development actions across the country, alleviating the burden on Pakistan's national public service system and helping Afghans sustainably reintegrate back home. But we must recognize that international support for Pakistan has been minimal compared to your own national efforts. As we look to the challenges ahead, the global community must step up. On the one hand, we mark 40 unbroken years of solidarity, but we also despair at 40 broken years of hostility. The Afghan conflict drags on, and we see the deep impact of the protracted nature of conflict, poverty, and forced displacement. We know the solutions lies in Afghanistan. And I hope the signals of a possible pathway for peace will lead to a better future for the people of Afghanistan. I see with us Ambassador Khalizad, and I want to strongly encourage to pursue the way of peace. And you can count, and the Afghan people can count with the United Nations to support the efforts for peace. We don't seek any protagonism. We are here only to serve. The Afghan people need and deserve, finally, peace and prosperity in full respect of their human rights. I want to reaffirm that the preferred durable solution for refugees has always been voluntary repatriation in safety and dignity to their country of origin. And this is also true for Afghan refugees. Our efforts on return and reintegration, led in large measure by UNHCR, are aligned with the Afghanistan National Peace and Development Framework. We are working together on a region-specific support platform to assist voluntary repatriation and sustainable reintegration of refugees in Afghanistan, while providing help to refugees and their host communities in both Pakistan and Iran. And our aim is to galvanize more resources and more investments, widen the circle of partners, and forge stronger linkages between humanitarian, development, and peace investments. And youth empowerment must be a special focus. We need a renewed commitment. We need to make sure that there is not only a strong movement towards peace, but that peace leads to effective reconstruction, creating the conditions for a successful return and reintegration of Afghan refugees. Working towards solutions for the Afghan people is not just a sign of solidarity, it's in the world's best interests. Afghans now constitute the largest group of arrivals in Europe, exceeding for the first time the arrivals from Syria. And returns to Afghanistan, as it was said, have hit a historical low. Afghanistan and its people cannot be abandoned. Now it's a time for the international community to act and to deliver. And our ability to succeed will be a litmus test for the Global Compact on Refugees. Its promise of greater responsibility sharing with countries that have shouldered the burden until now. Peace efforts leading to intra-Afghan negotiations will pave the way, but sustainable peace and security hinges on better integrating our work on humanitarian, development, and peace efforts. Done right, this work can be a model for the rest of the world. We must be realistic. We know big challenges lie ahead, but the message of this conference and the presence of so many senior government officials from all over the world is a testament of hope and commitment to a new partnership for solidarity and a better future for the people of Afghanistan and Pakistan and for the world. Shukriya.
Thank you, Secretary General Guterres. Now,
Secretary General, UN Commissioner for Refugees, Mr. Vice President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. This occasion of celebrating 40 years of Afghan refugees in Pakistan. And I said celebrating because there are not many instances in the modern world where those who have been refugees have conducted themselves with such dignity and honor. And the hosts, despite challenging economic situation, probably the last 20 years have been the most difficult for the people of Pakistan in terms of our economic situation. So the hosts, despite unemployment, competition for jobs, the way they have kept their relation, the wonderful relationship with the Afghan refugees. Let me just point out a side effect, a pleasant side effect of the Afghan refugees. The children in the refugee camps started watching the Pakistan cricket team and learning how to play cricket. And Afghanistan today has an international cricket team. But the embarrassing thing is that their under-19 cricket team beat Pakistan under-19 cricket team. I hope they don't beat us, our full cricket team. But this is a remarkable relationship that has endured. And I again repeat, considering the situation in Pakistan, what we faced, what our economy has faced. And it reminds me of one thing which I learned when I was raising funds in my country for various charities, that generosity has nothing to do with one's bank balance. A country in the situation that we were, and I really say with pride that the way we have hosted our refugees. Bear in mind that Pakistan, when it came into being in 1947, had the biggest refugee problem. And my mother's family, of course, also were refugees coming from India in 1947. I want to refer to what the Afghanistan Vice President said when he talked about our Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and the Muslim migrants to Medina. You see, the reason why I feel that this relationship endured in Pakistan for 40 years was because of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who when they migrated from Makkah to Medina, when they faced religious persecution, that relationship between the people, hosts of Medina, and the refugees from Mecca was exemplary. And it has stayed in the Muslim psyche for all these centuries. And the second aspect I want to highlight about the great characteristic about our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was that he was the ultimate leader. He believed in uniting human beings. His title given to him in our book, Holy Quran, was a mercy for mankind, not for Muslims, for mankind. And he showed an example of forgiving all the people who persecuted him and then uniting human beings. And this is the hallmark of a good leader. We love Nelson Mandela because he forgave the people who persecuted him, united human beings, saved South Africa. And unfortunately, when we look at much richer countries, this is not the case. Political leaders use refugee problems for dividing humanity, to get votes. They transfer hatred towards the refugees who already are suffering. Who wants to be a refugee? it is probably the most difficult decision for a human being to leave his home. And so as it is, the refugees are suffering because they are refugees. And on top of it, they face this xenophobia in so many influential, affluent, rich countries. On top of it, we have this new phenomena after 9/11, Islamophobia. Islamophobia compounds the miseries of Muslim refugees. And Islamophobia, we all know, it came after 9/11 because terrorism and Islam were equated, Islamic terrorism. People could not tell the difference. The extremes in a human society, all human societies have moderates, liberals, and extremists. And if you concentrate on the extremes of a human society, you can demonize any human society. When as a teenager, when I went to England for the first time, there were these people called the skinheads. They would go around beating people because of the color of their skin. Imagine if I had defined the British society by what I saw of the skinheads. I would have ended up demonizing one of the most liberal societies in the world. This is what is happening with Islam. And that's why Muslim refugees suffer more than other refugees. Mr. Secretary General, I'm especially worried about what is happening across the border in India. An extremist ideology has taken over a country of over 1 billion people with nuclear arms. The ideology which talks about racial superiority and then shifts the blame for why this race hasn't attained its so-called great potential, they shift it towards another minority and spread hate against him. This is the easiest way of getting votes. Nationalist parties all over the world now are gaining by actually blaming another human community for all their problems. And in India, with two legislation, the Registration Act and the Citizen Act, two legislation which are actually target 200 million people in India, Muslims in India. This, in future, if it's not checked, if the world community doesn't raise its voice against it, this injustice, this will have future problems for our country because it could have a huge refugee problem. The BJP leaders, we watch them on television. When the people protest against this unfair legislation, Muslims protest, they tell them to go to Pakistan. And secondly, what is happening in Kashmir? 8 million people are still in an open prison for over 6 months. It's because of this ideology. And this again has severe implications in the future if the world community doesn't raise its voice against it. And finally, about Afghanistan, the Afghan Vice President, thank you for saying complimentary things about me, but let me just clear first of all. It is my belief, it's not something I'm saying because of this conference or because I'm being a diplomat. It is my belief that the people of Afghanistan in the last 40 years have suffered more than any other human community. And I pray from my heart that these peace talks succeed in Afghanistan. We have been, ever since my government has come into power, we have tried our best. Whatever support we can give to these peace talks, I can tell you we have tried our best. Mr. Zalmay Khalilzad is sitting here. I've had several meetings with him. He knows that the whole country is on the same page. Our security forces are on the same page. Normally, there was an idea that the security forces in Pakistan had their own policy and the government a different one. This is not the case in Pakistan anymore. Whatever the situation might have been in the past, right now I can tell you, all of us, there's one thing we want is peace in Afghanistan. it's not just because we have 1.4 million registered refugees. We are the second country in the world with the second biggest refugee population, and for 22 years we were the #1 country with the biggest refugee population. It's not because of that, because the people of Afghanistan deserve peace. That's the most important thing. Just on as a human being, we should all hope that the long-suffering Afghan people finally have peace. And we will be doing everything. We are doing everything to facilitate this process. And not only doing everything, we are praying that this peace process now moves forward in the right direction. Mr. Vice President, you mentioned about safe havens in Pakistan. I can tell you that there are no safe havens here. After 9/11, it is possible that there were places where the militants who were fighting in Afghanistan, it's possible they stayed. But then we have refugee camps for over 500,000 people, over 100,000 people. How is any government supposed to check a few thousand militants if they operate from within them? So in a way, it is important for peace so that the refugees, the conditions in Afghanistan are such that the refugees can go back. So then we can take responsibility if someone operates from this side. But with still 2.7 million Afghans here, it is not possible for us to completely guarantee, although we are building a fence now, and almost the fence has been completed. But it is still not possible. But rest assured, it is not in our interest that there's conflict in Afghanistan. Not in our interest. #1, I repeat, because we want peace in Afghanistan on a humanitarian level. And we've always had, and even before Pakistan came into being, this part of India always had close ties with Afghanistan. In fact, for 80 years or 70 years, this was part of Afghanistan where you're sitting right now. So, #1, on humanitarian basis. #2, because our areas on the borders, on the Durand line, either side of the border, this war on terror has devastated the people. There's massive poverty there. And the one way we can actually bring jobs and prosperity is by having trading relationship and peaceful relationship. So, to rehabilitate the merged districts that have become part of Pakistan, and at one point, half the population of the merged district was internally displaced, internal refugees. So to bring them, give them jobs, bring prosperity, we need peace in Afghanistan. And then, for the future, the connectivity between Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Central Asia, as Mr. Vice President mentioned again, that is the future. Trade. It is how we will give. We have the second youngest population in the world. We need to give them jobs. Jobs won't come with conflict. We need peace. So let me assure you that it is not in the interest of Pakistan for there to be any strife in Afghanistan. Whatever, I don't know, whatever the policies might have been before, but I can tell you, since 1.5 years my government has come into power, we have done everything, and I really mean everything, to facilitate the Afghan peace process. Finally, Secretary General, I want to especially welcome you here. I want to welcome you because it's a very important time. I think the UN must play its part. I don't say it as political point scoring. I really am worried of what is happening in India. And it's not just me who's worried. If you look at the demonstrations in India, what is going on, the civil society, the intellectuals, the opposition party members, everyone is worried what's happening there. I know India. I used to play cricket, and cricket, as you know, the India-Pakistan cricket match, was bigger than most of you probably watch Soccer World Cup. This was the biggest event that ever used to take place. And I can tell you, this is not the India I know. This is not the India of Nehru and Gandhi. This is something unique that's happening. And as a student of history, whenever an ideology that is based on hate and which brings in this ultra-nationalism of any race, it always ends up in bloodshed. This ideology was inspired by the Nazi Germans, by the Nazis. You just have to read what their founding fathers said about the Nazis, how they admired them, the racial purity, and how the ethnic cleansing of Jews was accepted by them. And if this ideology is not checked, like in the 30s, the Nazi ideology was not checked, it will end in massive bloodshed. This is not a small joke, a country of over 1 billion people, Pakistan, a country of over 200 million people. And in future, if the United Nations does not play its part, this could become one of the flashpoints in the world. And that's why, I mean, not to alarm you, but prevention is better than cure. Before things go out of hand, and the statement of Indian Prime Minister that they can destroy Pakistan in 11 days, does a responsible Prime Minister of a country of over 1 billion people, does he make a statement like that? And then the army chief saying that they can take over Pakistan side of Kashmir whenever the parliament signals. So it is heading in the wrong direction. I was in the United Nations in September, and this was the first time I flagged it. Things have only gone worse since then, and unless the world community takes notice, things will get far worse. Thank you.
Of Afghanistan, and that is why even today they wanted a gradual repatriation. We have done everything possible to support not just the peace process, but to be good hosts. I don't have to go into what was said by the Vice President. The Prime Minister very politely responded to that. We are here as friends. We want to be positive and we want to be helpful. We know what we can see in the days ahead is light at the end of the tunnel. Nobody could see that. For years, nobody could see that. And it is always very easy to pass the buck. Blame someone for challenges that are internal. Despite that, we will remain constructive, we will remain positive, we will not get into a blame game, because we want a stable, peaceful, prosperous Pakistan. Pakistan once again offers help and support in our own interest.
Shah Mahmood Qureshi, it was important to...
And I have an enormous envy for my friend Filippo Grandi, because it is the possibility to be permanently with the people that are the most vulnerable and the vulnerable, and to support them, and to be able, taking decisions to improve their situation, and in some circumstances, to help find solutions for them. But at the same time, it's an extremely frustrating situation. Can you imagine, when I joined the UNHCR, we were having a reduction in the number of refugees. We were helping 1 million people go back home every year. And even some people were discussing, well, maybe UNHCR is coming to the end of its functions. And all of a sudden, there was a reverse in this trend. And we are now having the largest number of refugees since the Second World War. And what is terrible in the work of humanitarians is that we do everything we can to support people, but we do not manage to find a solution for them. Because the solution is not humanitarian. The solution is political. And the solution is peace. And that is why at the present moment, all our efforts need to concentrate on supporting this peace process. And this peace process is, I believe, particularly difficult. Peace always needs intensive care. I mean, peace is like a patient in need of intensive care. But in this case, you have a patient in need of intensive care, and you have several people, inside and outside, that are probably wanting to go and take out the connection to one of the machines or whatever to see if the patient dies. And so we need to mobilize the international community as a whole to fully support the peace process and to make sure the spoilers, internal and external, will not be able to undermine it. And that is what the United Nations is also willing to do. As I said in my intervention, we don't want any protagonism. We don't want to be the heroes of no. No, we just are here to serve. And to serve is to do everything possible to support Afghans in what will need to be an Afghan-owned and Afghan-led process, and to make sure that we do everything possible to make life difficult to the spoilers that would prefer this to go on and on and on. Let's not forget that war is a business. And there is always people interested in maintaining a war. And this time, for the first time since I remember, there is a true opportunity for peace in Afghanistan. So let's all concentrate in this intensive care, and let's make sure that the spoilers will not destroy the perspective for peace that is possible now. And if peace is possible, we will need afterwards, and maybe to a certain extent at the same time, we need massive support of the international community for a massive investment in Afghanistan in order to allow Afghanistan to give to the people a dividend of peace, which means development, which means the creation of jobs, which means the improvement of the public services, health and education, and which means the creation of the conditions that will naturally attract Afghans also to go back home and to restart their lives in their own country. We always say we are in favor of voluntary repatriation in safety and dignity, but it's not enough to say that. We need to create the pull factors that attract people to go back home. And these require, beyond peace, a massive investment not only to consolidate peace, but also to create the conditions that make opportunities for refugees attractive enough for a massive movement of return to be able to take place.
Some extraordinary is one of those emergency room doctors. I wonder, and in those corridors of power, you're in those rooms, in the negotiations, people's lives and their futures, I think it can be agreed, hinges on peace.
Well, thank you. First of all, since it's my opportunity to thank Pakistan for its really for so long. I've observed it myself, but I've also heard from many Afghans. Unfortunately, I've been a witness to the Afghan tragedy for a long time, and I've heard how exceptional the hospitality has been.
Ambassador, could you move the microphone slightly closer to you so that everybody can hear you? Thank
How's
you.
that?
Yeah, that seems to be better.
So,
okay.
I even know Afghans who have been educated in Pakistan as refugees who are contributing now to their country. So kudos and thanks to Pakistan. Thank you also for convening this meeting, and thanks for saying that Pakistan is going to be part of the solution. And Pakistan has been helping since I launched this effort on behalf of the United States. Thank you also to the Secretary General and to the current leader of UNHCR. You've done a great service for the people of Afghanistan in your various positions and now. With regard to how well the patient is doing, I think that I am cautiously optimistic that we've made progress. It's a very complicated problem, no doubt. There are internal issues of Afghans to accept each other, to come to a change in the mindset that you have to, one side has to win, the other side has to lose. That is not militarily feasible anymore. There has to be a political solution, and that means compromises, accommodation of each other. I think the Afghan people are yearning for peace. That's not a surprise. 40 years is a very long time. I think the Prime Minister spoke very eloquently and accurately that when we think about this, we have to think of the Afghan people first and foremost. Surely we have an interest, the United States, that we don't want Afghanistan ever to threaten the United States or our allies or any other country. But the suffering has been great. The war that is going on now, a lot of people are getting killed. It may not get as much attention in the media as it used to, but a terrible war is continuing, and it needs to be brought to an end. And I believe that we've made progress in the sense that we and the Talibs, as a result of protracted discussion and negotiations, are talking about the reduction of violence, about leading to a signing of an agreement between the United States and the Taliban that will open the door to Afghans sitting across the table, one side led by the government of Afghanistan, the other side the Taliban, the UN, I hope, Mr. Secretary General, all of us will be there to help if our help is needed, and that we have commitments from the Talibs on the security issues. We have obviously commitments and agreements with the government of Afghanistan on security issues. Yes, there will be difficulties, as the foreign minister said, there will be challenges. We want to move beyond the blame game, as the foreign minister said, but to problem solve and to do what we can, because outsiders do have a role in Afghanistan. We are there, we have a role, neighbors have a role, they can play a role as a constructive partner, or they can be a spoiler, both, as the Secretary General said, inside and out. And I have to say that, that while the challenges are there, the opportunity is also now there. And I hope that Afghans and the neighbor will rise to the occasion. And we have to cooperate between now and when we get to an agreement among Afghans. But at the same time, I believe, since war is the cause for the refugees, war is the cause for some of the economic problems that Afghanistan has, the suffering of the people, we need to also update our plans for the refugee returns, given the possibilities that are there. We need to also get more engagement between Pakistan and Afghanistan, for not only for peace, so that each territory is not used against the other. After peace, that there are assurances, confidence that each other's territory will not be used against each other, but that as the American agreement with the Taliban can open the doors of inter-Afghan negotiations, that the peace agreement will open the door for much greater Pakistan-Afghanistan cooperation on economic issues, for example, not only on consolidating the peace, but also on economic cooperation. And I also think, over the longer term, the Afghan economic cooperation is less urgent than the peace. The peace is the most urgent. The benefit of peace for the two countries needs to be planned for, and also the Prime Minister says it, the President of Afghanistan says it, that the ultimate economic solution is regional cooperation on economic issues, on trade, on integration, on development. I think this Afghan-Pakistan cooperation opens the door for that. It can't happen without that. So we need to have a more longer-term cooperation or discussion started now as to how does Pakistan want to relate to Central Asia. Yes, economic cooperation is good, but how? what sort of relations does Pakistan want with the C5, the Central Asian countries? What Afghanistan's relations will be with the Central Asian countries? What the two together will do vis-a-vis the Central Asian countries? It's time for some intellectual thinking of how to operationalize, assuming peace, the potential on the economic front and the potential on the bilateral and on the regional basis. So yes, I am cautiously optimistic, but I'm realistic enough to know that there are lots of challenges ahead, but I believe that maybe better than any time in the last couple of decades, there is an opportunity.
And I wonder, people maybe don't realize just how bad the situation is. Maybe it's not in the media as often as it should be. It's underestimated as well, and the scale of it when it comes to Afghan refugees.
Certainly, it is not underestimated here, where 40th anniversary of a very heavy-duty hospitality. But I wanted to make a comment, speakers before me. You know, UNHCR, as the Secretary General knows very well, years. There's very few other populations with whom we have been so closely associated as an institution. And therefore, I think we know this population well. And if you go back to the history of this long exile, you have two significant moments. One is 1992, after the withdrawal of the Soviet troops from Afghanistan, massive, relatively large return of refugees to Afghanistan was not sustained. Country went into civil war. In fact, I remember as a very young field officer serving in Jalalabad, people were coming in this direction. We had to assist them on the way. That was the early 90s. Then there was the early part of the next decade, 2002, after the Taliban war. I was actually the head of UNHCR in Kabul, and Ambassador Khalilzad was actually the US ambassador then, back then, and we witnessed an amazing return. 3 million people. I remember in Torkham, trucks lining up with people wanting to return to a relatively fragile situation, but in a way voting for their feet in the hope that the country would remain peaceful and they could contribute. After so many years, they had already been 20, 25 years in exile, they could contribute to the rebuilding of their country. Now, I hope that the patient will live, and that with the support of everybody, but especially with the engagement of the Afghans, because this is their process in the end, this process will be successful. The peace patients will live. And then this may, once again, trigger a movement of people going back. I do believe that, 2 times, 3 times, people become more cautious, more time goes by, it's more difficult. But I do believe that we may be surprised by, again, another drive to repatriation. But we can't disappoint the Afghans once again. I can't think of any other refugee population in the world, other than perhaps the Palestinians, that have been more betrayed by history than the Afghans. And I think we cannot betray them once again. If the peace movement progresses, then as all the speakers have said, we need to build on the heels of it a real peace and not let go, because otherwise it will not be sustainable, and then, frankly, it will be too late to try it once again. So we have a chance here that I think is important, and I hope that everybody, in particular, if I may say, the Afghan parties, are the ones to live up to this responsibility to their own people. We cannot disappoint them. I want to make just a final comment, and I did mention this briefly in my opening remarks. Meanwhile, of course, because this won't be fast, this will take time, and yesterday I was very happy to hear the foreign minister speak about graduality, because this will have to be a gradual process. Meanwhile, hospitality will continue beyond these 40 years. And there, as I go back and finally answer your question, I think it is fair to say that yes, it has become very difficult to mobilize resources to help Pakistan, but also Iran, the other big host country, to shoulder this responsibility. Most of what is done now for the refugees in these two countries, in health, in education, in giving them access to livelihoods, is done by the host countries. Right. The international community, we speak a lot about burden sharing. That burden sharing has become minimal. So, we've been working with both countries on new ways to address these challenges involving development actors. It's very, very complicated, but we have an important discussion with the World Bank here in Pakistan. This needs to continue as we prepare for the most important solution, which is return. So we need to play on both tables at the same time, and we need the support of everybody.
Of Afghan refugees here. You heard from Filippo Grandi, it will take time. Incumbent on the Pakistani government to even up the hospital life better for those Afghan refugees within the borders of Pakistan, regardless.
So I think in terms of the hospitality and Pakistan's hospitality, I think we should put things in the largest tertiary care hospital on the closest to the Pak-Afghan border. And I distinctly recall 30% of our patient load used to be Afghans. We never called them refugees. We never put them in waiting lines. We never put them in queues on hospital operation lists. We just treated them as our own. And I think it's important to unpack that word that you said, Filippo, and to understand very clearly that in this country, which had its own political and operational problems, with a severe financial crunch, we opened our primary healthcare services, our hospitals, to every Afghan entering the border. And it has been 40 years since. We made access to primary education free for all Afghan children. And if you look back at that time, we're talking about huge millions of Afghan refugees coming through the border. For a country to exhibit that level of generosity is very unprecedented. And it is not just that, we made access in terms of integration into the economy and the ease of doing business pretty straightforward. And if you go to some of our cities where they were passing through and where they integrated, the entire social fabric had changed. And that put enormous pressure on our infrastructure, on our public delivery systems. And the state exhibited enormous generosity, enormous and unparalleled generosity. And it wasn't just the state, it was the people themselves. Because you had to be living in that city to understand the impact on their lives. Because for those poor people, and some of them were poorer than the refugees who were coming in, the cost of rents went up. The transportation fares went up. The labor costs came down, so they were earning less because Afghan refugees would offer themselves for much less. Their business space was crowded out. The children had less opportunity to go to school. They had to endure much longer waiting lines. And as I said, these were very poor people who opened their houses and their homes, and their hospitality was truly unprecedented. And not even once during the course of those decades did I ever hear any statement that reflected a xenophobic attitude, unfortunately, which was exhibited during recent waves of migration. So I think as a starting point, we should recall, and Secretary General was very generous in acknowledging Pakistan's contributions this morning when he so eloquently spoke. So I think that there's that dimension of hospitality before we talk about now and what we can do that we need to put in perspective. And I was just propelled by your words of, to bring some personal perspectives to the table. What do we do now? And I think that there is also a tremendous opportunity for us to assist, but in a slightly different way, because we're talking about repatriation, we're talking about them going But there has to be the pull factor there. They have to go back to something that's worthwhile. And I completely hear you, and I completely, because the word of peace is resonating loud. So peace brings investments coupled with the government's ability to accrue benefits equitably will create the job opportunities, and that will make it worthwhile for the Afghans on our side of the border to go back, and that's accepted. But what is it that you can catalyze for the bottom of the pyramid? And that's where the Pakistani experience these days can come into play quite significantly. Because our Prime Minister has a signature initiative called ESAS. ESAS means compassion, and ESAS is a whole of government initiative to embed welfare into the mandate of all ministries. It's a social protection initiative. It's got allied livelihoods and jobs creation initiatives for the bottom of the pyramid, to develop human capital, which we know is so fundamentally important for countries to progress in the economies of the future. And over the last 1 year, we've recognized that there are some strategic coordinated approaches that you can adopt to catalyze the economy at the bottom of the pyramid. We're very happy to share those experiences with our colleagues across the border. For example, we've realized that by accelerating and expanding the cash transfer program, you can increase people's purchasing power, and that helps small businesses. For instance, we have come to believe that with some of the experiences that we've had with graduating individuals out of poverty, with some of the randomized controlled trials that we've conducted over the last couple of years, and the evidence that has shaped our policy around the graduation of very poor individuals at the base of the pyramid, we've come to understand how to combine asset transfers with interest-free loans with skill building. And we're in the midst of some massive interventions that we're rolling out. In fact, this Thursday, the Prime Minister is going to a very remote village to inaugurate an asset transfer program, which is built on the evidence from a randomized controlled trial, a very large program that we're upscaling. So these are the two pillars that we think are very catalytic for inclusive economic opportunities at the base of the pyramid. There are others that we have deployed at scale. For instance, the combination of financial and digital inclusion and what it does for economies at the base of the pyramid. But then with our own experience, we also understand that this is a very complicated business. It's about connectivity, it's about access to handsets, it's about telecom policy, it's about creative content creation. It's about a whole new paradigm of education. And then another important piece of what we're doing for these bottom of pyramid economies is our new initiative on rural value chain building, where an expert group is accelerated its work to develop a new policy framework where we will actually create the incentives for private sector to invest in these small enterprises, which will help value chain building. And of course, you layer it up with digital, you layer it up with women interacting with access to handsets, and you layer it up with a handset policy with costs coming down, and there's a whole new opportunity that opens up for the bottom of pyramid. So I just wanted to say that there's innovative, cutting-edge work in a multi-sectoral, coordinated fashion, very much in line with the spirit of the Sustainable Development Goals, very much leveraging the potential and outreach of the private actors that is currently ongoing with various strands and streams. And of course, we have a partners forum where we have all the development partners engage with us to bring to the table where their comparative advantages.
Right.
And with the leadership of our foreign ministry and the foreign minister, we're very happy to explore how we can technically cascade some of our learnings across the border, because it's fundamental to have the pull there, to have something worthwhile there for these individuals to go back to.
Okay, and I guess as we get the initial comments from Harun.
For the hospitality in the last 40 years, and also thank the UN agencies for supporting our refugees here. I think every single Afghan who lived in Pakistan and also in Iran will never forget the hospitality that we have received in these two countries, especially in Pakistan, majority of us here. and we'll be grateful forever for that. I think we are in a very important juncture of the history. We have two things that we are discussing now. One is peace, and now on this occasion we are discussing the return of our refugees back to our homeland. The challenge that Mr. Filippo has mentioned rightly was we never got these two things right in the past. So we don't need to repeat the history again. Our proposal is that we should get our acts together and we should get these two issues right this time. Therefore, our proposal is that, and this has been discussed with officials of Islamic Republic of Pakistan as well, 2 years ago when ex-Prime Minister Khaqan Abbasi visited Kabul and also in different occasions. We do want our refugees to repatriate to Afghanistan back, gradual, and that's what we agreed as well. And for that, we are proposing we should work together, the two governments, Pakistan and Afghanistan, we should work together to have a comprehensive, gradual program for the repatriation of the refugees, which will, of course, consider the pull factors as well, and I'll come to the pull factors in a moment as well, which will discuss every and each single detail, and then we would like to propose that program to be supported by international agencies like UN. I think that's the only viable solution, because if we are talking in silos and we have our own plans in different organizations or countries, and we are not involving the two countries who are the host country and the refugee country in the population here, we will not have a sustainable approach to this, and I'm afraid that we'll be repeating the history again. We are thankful for the support that we have received from the Pakistani side as well, and thankful to Foreign Minister Qureshi mentioning it again that they are supportive. This is exactly what we want. We want Pakistan to be our partner in peace process. Without Pakistan being our neighbor and hosting us for 40 years, I think peace may not be possible. So there might be a lot of difficult topics that we may need to discuss between the two countries. And that should never be considered as a blame game. I think there are issues, difficult topics, and discussions that we need to take place in order to put an end to the 40 years of crisis also in Pakistan that you mentioned, and also the at least 4 decades of war in Afghanistan. The peace in Afghanistan has no loser. It's a win-win for everyone. It's a win for of course, for all Afghans first. It's a win situation and winning thing for the region itself. In the last 5 years, the Afghan government has been championing the regional connectivity. We are connected back to Central Asia, and we are offering a lot of connectivity in the part of the region as well. And the urban development plans, the pull factors comes there. The urban development plans are in place. We are going to invest heavily in our irrigation system now, in water management. We are going to have 1.5 million hectares of land newly under irrigation, ready for agriculture. We have been having a lot of refugees returning in the last 3 years as well. The process never stopped. The reason why we didn't have a lot of problems is because of our irrigation is developing now, and we had at least 2.5% increase in our irrigation products as well. And the mining sector of Afghanistan is now open as well for investment. So the discussion that we are proposing with Pakistan together to discuss the refugee issue and create the pull factor requires international support, and we should invest in things which will create economic opportunities and employment generation in Afghanistan. So there is incentives for Afghans to return and they will have a job. I'll give you just an example. There were Afghan refugees who were in Pakistan and they were making traditional Afghan shoes here. And we were importing the shoes from Pakistan. They returned in the last 3 years. Now they are producing that in Kabul and they have a big factory there. So that kind of conditions has to be enabled for them to invest. And we do have proper program for investment as well, for support in irrigation projects and also in mining, and also with UNHCR together on housing schemes for the refugees in Afghanistan. So again, I would like to thank for convening this very important conference, and we look forward to working together with the Pakistani government to discuss the issues that we have, and of course that does not mean any blame game.
And I want to use the opportunity to get Foreign Minister Qureshi's response to this.
As the Secretary General pointed out, who's in business is the business of war, right? And the conflict continues. There is a voice that has been enjoying a very exclusive position. And now, with this new arrangement, the approach has to be more inclusive. Who do you want to listen to? The voice of reason. Do we have a choice? My friend is here. Does he have a choice? Do I have a choice? There is no choice but to work together. We have to work in harmony. We have to understand. We have to collectively move forward. We can pick holes. We can point fingers. That will take us nowhere. I think the time has come. And the people of Afghanistan deserve peace, stability, and a bright future. I can assure you, my friend, that Pakistan is ready to partner with you. Pakistan is ready to engage with you. And Pakistan will have a very positive, constructive approach. We do not want to look into the past. Our eyes are set towards the future. So that is why. Thank you for coming to Islamabad. Our hearts are open to you. Our minds are open. We do not sit here with a closed mind. And that is why we have appreciated the role, Zal, you've played. We also recognize how important the role of the United States is. But let me conclude by saying, I think the Afghans, the people of Afghanistan, they're sick of war. They want peace. There could be an element that thinks differently, a minority. But the overwhelming majority of the people of Afghanistan are sick of fighting. They want peace. They want to live in peace as ordinary human beings. It's natural, one. The second point is, I think the international community is fatigued. They're fatigued. They have been doling out money. They have been contributing generously. And at times there are views that the money has not been ideally utilized. And there has been wastage, So we have to once again mobilize and convince the international community, you have gone that far, a little more help. Post, hopefully, a peace agreement is vital, is of importance for the resettlement, for reintegration. So you have been so generous, and you've paid a huge price. Everyone, every nation has. Most of you people sitting here, your countries have contributed. You've done it for 40 years. A little help at this crucial time will make all the difference.
Secretary General Guterres, you're more...
There is here an opportunity that cannot be missed. Said by Ambassador Khalizad and by the Minister for Central Asia. We can have, with peace, geoeconomic and geostrategic change in the region. Russian Empire and the British Empire competing. And where was the center of that competition? Afghanistan. Then the second great game with the Soviet invasion and the East-West conflict at the time, the communist world versus... Where was the center of that second great game? Afghanistan. Now there is a chance of a third great game, but not a game with foreign empires disputing and making victims of the countries of the region, a game that can bring together Central Asia, Afghanistan and Pakistan and create fantastic opportunities. Central Asian countries are landlocked. What is their natural way to the sea? Through Afghanistan and Pakistan. Where did invasions come to Pakistan? Through Afghanistan from Central Asia. This is history. And history always repeats itself. So there is a chance here to create a zone of prosperity and enormous opportunities of development for Central Asia, for Afghanistan, and for Pakistan. And this is an opportunity that cannot be missed. And it will facilitate the return of refugees, because these opportunities will generate economic development, will generate new corridors, will generate new traffics, new trade, new industrial opportunities. So I think that this is the way for this region not to be anymore the playground of big powers, but to be the protagonists of their own development.
Ambassador Khalilzad, is the United
No, we're not. First, I want to endorse the very eloquent way that the Secretary General explained the opportunity. I think this is maybe a unique moment, and it will take not only a vision, but a real strategy, real plans to deliver on them. And Pakistan, given its size, has a unique role to play. But with regard to the United States, yes, we want to reduce the burden. There is no question about that. 18 years is a long time. A lot of resources have been spent, lives have been lost, but we would like to leave a good legacy behind in Afghanistan. That in terms of security, I have already mentioned what we're looking for, but we want to remain very much engaged and support Afghanistan. And I also believe that another opportunity that I did not refer to earlier is that the kind of vision that the Secretary General explains so eloquently also will help our relations with Pakistan. We want to have a much better relationship with Pakistan. With the war ending in Afghanistan, with focus on regional development, economic development, governance, rule of law, human rights, balanced development, our relation with Pakistan also will improve significantly. And I have said that repeatedly to the Secretary, to the Minister and to the Prime Minister and others, that the United States desires a much stronger relationship with Pakistan. And we're partnering for peace in Afghanistan, but we'll partner for economic development. And I'm particularly encouraged that the Prime Minister of Pakistan, the Army Chief, and the President of Afghanistan, they all say essentially the same thing. When you talk to them about regional connectivity, about regional integration, about moving beyond the blame game that and distrust and mistrust. There will always be a degree of mistrust, but excessive, that we need to overcome that. And I think we're not looking for cutting and running, as some say, because in that case, if that was the case, I wouldn't be working on a peace process. We would do it just a withdrawal, and we don't need anyone's permission to withdraw. We could do it unilaterally, but all this effort that we have made is to get a peace agreement, not to repeat the mistakes that were made in the 90s, to avoid that. Some of us were around, as we were saying, so we want to learn from that. No, we're looking for a good legacy, and we want to have a stronger relation with Pakistan and to help the region. You saw the Secretary of State traveling to Central Asia recently, talking about some of these issues.
Harun, you want to come in?
For to be the center of cooperation, not conflict, as the Secretary General has rightly mentioned. And in the last 5 years, we have taken actions that shows that we want to go through that direction. Our relationship with the Central Asian countries, after 100 years, we are part of the Central Asia again now. And our trade balance with Central Asia has increased 3, 4, 5 folds with Kazakhstan, with Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and others. And that's what we are offering in this occasion as well. We don't want to be a burden, or we don't want to be a aid recipient country anymore. We want to be a responsible partner, and we are asking for partnership in regional economic cooperation. The only solution to all the crises in this region is cooperation, bilateral, regional cooperation, and also economic cooperation. I'm very much optimistic with the environment that is created here, and I hope that these words turn into actions and we see a positive change in this region. Thank you.
Filippo Grandi, after everything you've heard here, can Afghan refugees betray them by everybody involved right now?
I certainly hope so. I was thinking, listening to these very interesting ministers, by Secretary General, by Ambassador, mentioned words this morning in the opening statements was solution, which is positive. It is great. We want to move towards a solution 40 years after the beginning of this problem. But I think that it is important that as we plan for those solutions, in order to avoid them failing very soon afterwards, in order to build that sustainability, we need to be very strategic in how we implement solutions in general. And I would say that the strategy should be to insert the solution to displacement in the broader strategies that have been mentioned.
To say something briefly in the beginning, and then we'll take some questions. There's one request.
I want to begin by thanking you, Mr. Secretary General, and you, the High Commissioner for Refugees, and all delegates for participating in this international conference for Afghan refugees. My message is that Pakistan is ready and willing to engage with the international community to develop a roadmap for future repatriation. We understand the challenges that you've spoken about. We are in agreement with you that it has to be gradual, it has to be time-bound, and it has to be well-resourced. And that's where we would need the support of the international community. And you've acknowledged that support has been vis-a-vis the refugees minimal so far. The other point that I want to make is the new realization that I saw. Realization between Afghanistan and Pakistan that we need each other. We have to coexist and we have to support each other to attain sustainable peace. You need Pakistan for reintegration, and Pakistan needs you for stability and peace in the region. Collectively, we can make things happen and open this region to a new era of development. You know, the geo-economic development that the Secretary General was referring to, connecting Central Asia right down the landlocked countries to Gwadar, the port that we are developing. The other point is, I was pleased to hear from Ambassador Zalmay Khalilzad that the US has also realized that they just cannot pack their bags and leave like they left earlier on, that they've got to have a plan of withdrawal, and that plan should be supportive of peace and reconciliation. So even when they are drawing down, they do have a role to play in the region and in Afghanistan. International community, as I said earlier on, is important. Their continued support will be required. And lastly, we all collectively have to be wary of the spoilers. The Secretary General mentioned there are spoilers inside and there are spoilers outside. So collectively, we have to defeat their design and attain peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General.
Three very brief messages. First, to express my deep gratitude and appreciation to the generosity and hospitality of Pakistan, having received for 40 years millions of Afghan refugees. In a world where so many borders are closed, In a world where so many refugees are rejected or stigmatized, Pakistan has not only opened its borders, but the Pakistanis have opened the doors of their houses and have opened their hearts to support Afghan refugees. Pakistan has provided the world with a global public good supporting Afghan refugees, and it's time for the international community to assume its responsibilities and to support Pakistan very meaningfully in this generous hospitality towards Afghan refugees and support Afghan refugees in their obviously difficult situation. Second message, paying tribute to the resilience and the courage of Afghan refugees, Afghan displaced, Afghans living in very dramatic conditions in their own country, and to say that it's time for Afghans to have a chance for peace, it's time for Afghans to have a chance for development of their own country. And the second message is that there is an opportunity for peace we cannot miss. We have not the right to miss this opportunity. No Afghan will forgive us if this opportunity is not seized. It is absolutely essential that all Afghan leaders and all members of the international community do everything possible to make peace become a reality. I'm very encouraged by the strong commitment of Pakistan to peace in Afghanistan. And it's also very important that the whole of the international community, once peace is achieved, decides to invest massively in Afghanistan to allow for the country to be able to develop itself and to create the conditions of prosperity that are needed for Afghans to return and face a new and prosperous life, and for peace in the region to be consolidated forever. I want to once again express my great gratitude for the wonderful hospitality I'm enjoying here in Pakistan and for the excellent opportunities that were given to me to participate in so many events in which Pakistan is contributing so positively, not only for the support to Afghan refugees, but for peace and for international cooperation and support of the UN in this very important moment we are living together.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. High Commissioner for Refugees.
I really don't want to repeat what has already been said, which says it all, other than one, of course, thank very much the government of Pakistan for organizing this conference. I think it is important to sometimes take a little step back, reflect on a long time situation and try to catalyze interest and support. One, because of course, as both the Foreign Minister and the Secretary General have said, we have an opportunity here. We must hope that we have an opportunity here. I said it earlier in the panel, you know, Afghans are among the most disappointed people in the world. We can't disappoint them again. It would be really a betrayal this time. But I think that all that we heard about commitments to peace, commitment to cooperation between Afghanistan and Pakistan and in the region provides a very good framework for solutions. Just an additional practical element. In December, we organized a global refugee forum. Actually, Pakistan was one of the 5 convening countries together with UNHCR, and not by chance. It's because of its very important role in hosting Afghan refugees for 4 decades. At that conference, where Prime Minister Imran Khan was present, we launched a platform to rally more support for solutions for Afghan refugees. And I really would like to use this opportunity to send a message to donors in particular to provide support through that platform. We've had now for 8 years a solution strategy for Afghan refugees. As the Foreign Minister said, we are struggling to mobilize the resources necessary. Now it would be really contributing to failure if those resources were not mobilized. So the resources should be first and foremost to create conditions in Afghanistan for people to return, the roadmap that the foreign minister is talking about. But of course, we also need resources to continue to support Pakistan and Iran, by the way, in hosting still so many Afghan refugees. So a strong appeal to mobilize resources around this platform. Thank you.
Thank you. Irrelevant question. Can we get the mic there, please?
Thank you. This is Mateen Haider representing GTV Net on Stability in Afghanistan. And our foreign minister has rightly talked about a roadmap. So question is, who will push forward United Nations can play, although Ambassador Zalmay Khalilzad held many rounds of talks with Afghan Taliban process. So peace is deeply linked with the repatriation of Afghan refugees. And if peace is not there.
Well, first of all, as I mentioned in my intervention, the UN is ready to participate in any of the peace talks that will take place, and namely in the Afghan-led and Afghan-owned process of reconciliation. And those peace talks, of course, will need the assistance of different organizations. The UN is totally at the disposal of the Afghans and totally at the disposal of the other actors in order to participate in the peace process and to help to consolidate it. On the other hand, it is clear that peace among the key Afghan actors is an absolute must in order to fight terrorism effectively. Because it is in a context of conflict that terrorism can spread and terrorism can prevail. And so we believe that if peace is established, if all key actors of Afghanistan come together, then it will be possible to isolate terrorist groups, and it will be possible to have a meaningful international support in order to neutralize any terrorist activities in Afghanistan. And the UN Office of Counterterrorism is entirely at the disposal of Afghanistan to support that process.
I'll just add, the Secretary General has pointed out that their role is going to be a supportive role, and he's reiterated that. But the most important role has to be played by Afghans themselves. What kind of a future do they want for themselves? Do they want to live in peace? As it was said, there is no military solution, and a political solution requires compromises. Are they willing to make those compromises? That has to be decided, and hopefully that intra-Afghan dialogue will lead to those compromises.
Thank you very much. We have a question here.
And to make it as soon as possible. So don't you think that the political government in Afghanistan...
The answer is very simple. I think it's high time for donors to see Pakistan as an essential partner in the protection and assistance of refugees, and to see Pakistan as an essential partner in the construction of the peace in Afghanistan, and to correspond to that by a very strong support to Pakistan in the context of the global solution of all the problems we have been discussing today.
Well, you are aware of the economic challenges that Pakistan is facing. I mean, that's no news to you. When we talk of repatriation, we have to keep in mind the capacity to absorb. If we keep pushing people and they cannot be absorbed, then you have seen in the past that there was a trickle back. We do not want that. It has to be well thought out, it has to be planned, and it has to be synchronized with our ability to send them and their ability to absorb them.
Thank you very much, please.
This is...
I think that, as I always say, and I believe it's UNHCR's doctrine, the preferred solution for refugees is always voluntary repatriation in safety and dignity. In all massive return process in the world, there is always a group of people that in between got integrated in the society in which they live because they married, because they have other kinds of links. And let's not forget that beyond the refugee phenomenon, there is a migration phenomenon in this region. And I believe it will be very important for the governments of Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan also to establish a very meaningful cooperation in relation to migration in order to be able to address situations like the ones that you mentioned, not with the nature and character of refugee protection, but with the nature and character of the movements of population that take place everywhere in the world, but doing so in a way in which the cooperation among governments allow it to occur orderly and in a way that takes into account the interests of the people and the interests of the states involved.
Well, it all depends upon what the Afghan youth want for themselves for the future. They can take advantage of the linkages that they've developed in Pakistan, having lived here for years. Many of them have been born here, bred here, educated here. So take advantage of those linkages and partnerships and friendships that you've developed over the years and promote bilateral trade between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Attract investments into Afghanistan and from Afghanistan. You are the most natural ambassadors for that kind of linkage creation, and depends on your ability to take advantage of your connections here.
Mr. High Commissioner, you want to add?
Because it's an important one. You know, I was in Greece just a couple of months ago. 37% of the people arriving in Greece to the sea are now Afghans. Most of them are Afghan young people, actually young men. So I think that those in Afghanistan that have the power to make peace in government, but also the Taliban, have a responsibility to send to those young people a message of confidence, saying you don't need to risk your lives being trafficked through deserts, through the sea, risking being rejected in Europe, because this is what unfortunately is happening, just because you don't have confidence in your future in Afghanistan. But for this, we cannot simply tell these people, as many do, stay back home because that's where you belong. You have to give them confidence that they have a future there. And confidence passes first through peace and security, and second, through opportunities. So there needs to be immediately after peace, if peace comes, there needs to be massive investment in economic opportunities, in infrastructure, in other areas of development that will provide a sense of confidence for people to return, but also for young people not to leave.
Thank you. Please identify.
I had the opportunity yesterday in the press conference that was related essentially to those issues to fully respond to that question, and I will repeat the main principles. First main principle: every problem that exists in the world must be solved with diplomacy and dialogue. Every situation in which there is conflict must deserve de-escalation, and de-escalation both military and verbally. And as I said, my good offices are available, provided that all parties want to accept them. And third, in all these situations, it's absolutely essential that human rights and fundamental freedoms are fully respected, and that takes place there and everywhere in the world.
My first part.
Thank you very much. We'll move.
Obviously, we want them to go back. That's their home. That's where they belong. And that's where they should be. So, we want to facilitate, and we want to cooperate, and we want to be responsible in fulfilling this obligation.
Thank you.
All of the Human Rights High Commissioner that has been several times quite effective in this regard.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is Tariq Mahmood from Hum TV.
We want to facilitate, and we have been doing that. You heard Dr. Sania Nishtar speak earlier on in the panel, and she said, we did not differentiate between a Pakistani patient and an Afghan patient. They were all treated alike. There were no queues. There was no distinction made. That was our approach. Human, universal approach, one. Do we have alternative plans? Our plan is that the process succeed. And we have fulfilled our side of the deal, bringing people to the negotiating table, creating that enabling environment where people could sit and talk face to face. The rest depends on the Afghans. We will be friendly, responsible neighbors. We will be facilitators, and we are doing what we can to create that environment so that these people can go back.
Let me add, I was in Quetta 2 days ago and met many Afghan refugees. The most frequent request that they had, especially the young people, scholarships. Scholarships. So I think that when I spoke about this platform to mobilize more support, it has to be also oriented to projects that capacitate people. If you educate refugees well, when they go back, they'll be able to contribute to rebuilding their country. So definitely this is an area that we will continue to work on.
That we need to have full respect for the human rights of the people involved.
Thank you very much. With this, we conclude the. Thank you.